Hello. So we are talking about the herniations, and first of all, I need you to look at this particular diagram out here. Okay. So this is the normal view that we have. Okay. This is the falx cerebri. It's the dura mater. Okay. And this is the tentorium cerebri. Okay. Out here. Now the tentorium cerebri is like a tent that is separating the cerebrum from the cerebellum, and falx cerebri is the dura mater covering that's surrounding the two lobes, the right and the left hemisphere. All right, fine, fair enough. We have a herniation that's called the cingulate herniation that actually occurs below the subfalcine herniation, and it actually compresses the anterior cerebral artery because the anterior cerebral artery lies somewhere around this particular in the cingulate gyrus. Okay, so that's one point that has to be noted. So there can be an anterior cerebral artery infarction, and if you think about it, the anterior cerebral artery is actually supplying the medial part or the medial aspect of the frontal cortex, the parietal, the prefrontal, the motor areas, the sensory areas. So obviously there can be a lot of deficits, especially of the lower limb and of all the region up till the waist of the lower limb, essentially. So that's one point. The second point is that we have to talk about another herniation, that is your uncal herniation. And now we would look ourselves and focus on this diagram. This is your medial temporal lobe that's going to herniate, and when it herniates into the Kernohan's notch. All right, it herniates through the tentorium cerebri. Now we need to understand two things. In the early phases, when this actually now very important is that your cranial nerve 3, okay, it is somewhere arising out here. Okay, so this would be your CN3 would arise somewhere in the midbrain. Okay, now this is your left and this is your right. All right, now your cranial nerve 3 of the left hemisphere, all right, is in the midbrain, and when there is herniation, there is definitively let's say the herniation is of the left hemisphere. Medial temporal lobe of the left hemisphere is herniating towards the right. All right, there is going to be obviously certain amount of displacement and compression, okay, of the left cranial nerve 3. Okay, so there's going to be certain amount of compression of the left cranial nerve 3 as well, because the entire mass would be displaced downwards. Okay, so therefore there's going to be an ipsilateral dilated pupil, and there can also be diplopia, obviously. At the same time, there are certain fibers that are coming from the prefrontal cortex or the motor cortex, and they're crossing around at the medulla. So let's draw another diagram. Okay, let's say this is the brain stem. Okay, this is your temporal lobe, this is your premotor or the motor cortex. All right, here is the herniation. Your cranial nerve 3 is obviously involved. Now here you would have your fibers that are coming in, and they would obviously cross at the medulla. This is your medullary region. Okay, they are crossing at the medulla. Now in the early stages, when the herniation is just localized to this level, okay, it's going to actually compress the fibers that are coming from this region. Okay, that is from the left hemisphere. So in the early stages, it's going to cause ipsilateral dilated pupil and diplopia, or ipsilateral cranial nerve 3 paralysis. To make life easier, let's just write it: ipsilateral cranial nerve 3 paralysis. Plus, in the early stages, it's going to also cause contralateral hemiparesis. Why? Because it's first affecting these nerves that are coming from the left hemisphere and going to the right. So all the functioning of the right hemisphere is going to be affected. Correct? The right hemiplegia. Right hemiplegia. Now, in the later course of the disease, as the herniation progresses deeper into the medulla, okay, obviously the cranial nerve 3 of that side is going to be affected. So it's going to be ipsilateral cranial nerve 3 paralysis, so leads to a blown pupil and stuff like that. All right. And as it goes deeper, okay, it leads to something which is very interesting, and it's called as the Carnohan phenomena. Okay, so Carnohan phenomena is now what we are going to talk about. As it goes deeper, it also involves cranial nerve 3 of the contralateral side. So in Carnohan phenomena, obviously initially ipsilateral cranial nerve 3 was involved. Obviously it's involved, but now what happens is that as the herniation goes deeper, this one's spared, and now the cranial nerve 3 of contralateral paralysis is seen. So this one's gone. As it goes deeper, the fibers from the opposite side is affected, so leads to ipsilateral. As the fibers have crossed, it leads to ipsilateral paralysis. Amazing. So this is the switch of events that actually occurs in the Carnohan phenomena as the tumor goes deeper and lower into the medulla. All right. And finally, we have the fourth type of herniation that is signified out here, which is the uncal herniation. Uncal herniation. And this commonly leads to cerebral tonsil herniation and can compress the foramen, go through the foramen magna and compress the brainstem, and can lead to syringomyelia and what else and what not. So yes, these are the three major types of herniation that we had to study. I really wanted to focus on the Carnohan's notch, and I think that is what we did, and I am pretty happy. Thank you very much.